Joining me now to discuss is MSNBC legal analyst or civil rights attorney as well, and former Brooklyn prosecutor Charles Coleman, and Janelle Ross, senior correspondent for Time Magazine. She's also an MSNBC contributor. Very thrilled to have you both here. And Charles, I want to start with you because I want to just remind people why we are even here in the first place. Take a listen to the call that Donald Trump made back in 2020, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
All I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state, and flipping the state is a great testament to our country.
So I think it's important to remind people because, one, you cannot get pardoned from state charges, and two, just to punctuate the point that we are seeing that laws are broken. Charles, how many laws are broken in that phone call with Trump pressuring a local official to deny the will of the American people and tilt the election in his favor?
Well, Tiffany, I think that there are a number of different laws that are broken, the biggest one of which is an illegal attempt to influence the outcome of an election, in addition to suggestions around voter fraud and expressing the intent to defraud the American people. But I think on a larger level, it's important to understand why that conversation has led to this investigation. That by itself is pretty explosive. And as a prosecutor, I would be looking at it as a very strong piece of evidence. But there's more to the situation. There's more to the conversation. And that's what DA Willis is looking into now. She's trying to understand how deep is this rabbit hole? How deep does it go in terms of the different connections and everyone who's involved? So for people who may be looking at that conversation and wondering, well, you have the smoking gun. Yes, that is a smoking gun, but you still need a trigger person. You still need a getaway driver. You still need to be able to identify all of the people who were involved in making this happen. And that's where you're seeing the different parts of this investigation and the special grand jury continue to unfold.
Okay, before I bring Janelle and Charles, I want to ask you something else, because this is really blowing my mind. The entire January 6th investigation and all the tentacles it has across the country is blowing my mind. Lindsey Graham is saying his lawyers are challenging the subpoena. Last I checked, that wasn't a choice, because you never hear about Lamont Jenkins from Southwest Atlanta is deciding if he will cooperate with prosecutors. How is it that these people time and again can go back and say, maybe I'll show up, maybe I won't? Because the justice system don't work that way for the folks who look like the people on this screen.
Well, it's an understanding of the system and how it works. People don't always understand who does and does not have subpoena power. A lot of times subpoenas are issued, but there's no subpoena power behind them. For example, as a former DA, if I would issue a subpoena and no one would show up, that was the end of the story. Very few people knew that. We would have to go to court, get a declaration from a judge that this person was a material and essential witness, and that it was not a burden for them to show up unduly. And then we could enforce it by way of contempt. But before then, people don't know that there are a lot of bodies that don't necessarily have subpoena power. So what you're talking about is a function of just knowledge and information, and the fact that people don't realize that when you don't have that, the justice system works differently for different people.
Indeed, it does. We see that play out every single day. Janelle, I want to bring you in because you did an amazing interview with DA Fani Willis for Time Magazine. I was reading that profile piece. Take a listen, because something I'm concerned about is her safety. As we know, members of Congress are protected here on Capitol Hill, but when you get to these local officials in the states, they don't have that same protection. Take a listen to what two election workers testified about during their experience after falling in the ire of the right wing, and then I'll ask you about it on the other side.
A lot of threats, wishing death upon me, telling me that, I'll be in jail with my mother, and saying things like, be glad it's 2020 and not 1920.
I get nervous when I have to give my name for food orders. I'm always concerned of who's around me. I've lost my name, and I've lost my reputation. I've lost my sense of security.
So if this is what two women who were just poll workers standing on the front lines of democracy, like so many before them, we all know that testimony is not unusual in our history in this country. How protected is DA Fani Willis, and has she interfaced with any kind of violent threats? Did she talk to you about it?
I will say this, first and foremost, it's my understanding that the district attorney in Fulton County has long had 24-hour protection, literally around the clock. Anytime she's awake, essentially, there is a protective detail that is physically with her. When I was in Atlanta following the district attorney around, her protective detail went everywhere with her. I mean, shopping, the gym, you name it. So she does have protection at all times, and that is a situation that predates her election. The previous district attorney also had round-the-clock protection. Unfortunately, Atlanta is a place that has some pretty significant gang activity. DA Willis has decided to make the prosecution of gang members a major part of her how she plans to use some of the authority in her office, so that has certainly been necessary. Now, of course, as you said, I think that taking on or pushing forward with the special grand jury investigation and the very real possibility that it could be DA Willis that actually charges the former president might raise the level of threats that are directed towards DA Willis is a pretty high likelihood, unfortunately. I think, as you said, from what we know about what has happened to other people in Georgia or other people around the country, quite frankly. So I think that's a real possibility. And I would suspect that they are prepared for that.
Yeah, let's hope so. And since you talked to her, I mean, she really does have the strongest case against Donald Trump. Very interesting to me that she is the face of the person who could potentially topple this wannabe dictator. Did she give you any insight in your interview with her a few months back as to what she's weighing as she decides how to proceed with Donald Trump in this entire case?
I think almost anyone who has had any kind of real contact with the district attorney in Fulton County will tell you that she is a very matter-of-fact person. She is not a person who scares easily. And I think she takes a very specific, very, very deliberate, very, very careful approach to her work. But she, from what I could see, literally has a practice of putting the evidence that they have up on a wall, a giant screen, sort of a projector that they have in their conference room. And right beside that, she will put up the statute or the relevant statutes. There were extended debates about which statutes are even relevant in terms of some cases while I was there. These are, of course, not cases related to the former president. And quite literally, as she likes to often say, she will put it up on the wall and see what fits. So I would expect her to take the same approach here. I think I've mentioned in many cases that she has certainly prosecuted other people or taken on cases that were not particularly popular. Certainly celebrities, Atlanta public school teachers. Yeah. And I don't think that she has a track record of letting that get in her way.
Charles, we're out of time, so as quickly and concise as you can. Rudy Giuliani is also among the people they subpoenaed, as well as Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham's attorney is saying he's not a target of this investigation. What do you think the prosecutors are hoping to learn from Lindsey Graham and Rudy Giuliani?
I think they want to find out exactly how much pressure they attempted to put on the Georgia Board of Elections and the Secretary of State. In addition to that, how much of that direction, how much of that pressure came at the behest of former President Trump, and ultimately whether they can be tied in as conspirators or whether it can buttress any claims that might exist against President Trump and his actions and intent around the attempt to influence Georgia's elections outcome.